Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Joe Davis, Southern New Hampshire University, Justice 101. We are in Module 5, Milestone 3. Okay, this is about ethics and decision making and principles. There's not a lot of material in the text, but there is some starting on about page 129. I think it runs to 134. It's probably where you're going to find the most help for this. Okay, here's the first scenario, and that's a police officer. We're going to talk about ethical standards. Police officer goes in a very busy deli to get a sandwich. The owner tells him that it's free. That's not acceptable, of course. So what professional and ethical standards should be in place? Well, there should be policies and procedures that talk about that. There should be a code of ethics, maybe a value statement, like a mission statement for the organization, and then, of course, training. I can tell you from personal experience, when I took over as a chief of police services, a new Pollo Loco Mexican chicken place opened. I did not know that traditionally they are half price. So, of course, my finest deputies go in, order up the world, and how much ever it was, they are winking, nodding, waiting for it to be half price. Everybody that worked for me was convinced I had been to every restaurant in town and told them not to give them a discount. I hadn't been to any, but I sure made it a point to get to them all. All right, take a look at that one. There shouldn't be a whole bunch to it. You're not going to take a free lunch because it's unethical. You're being paid to do that. It's a quid quo pro. There are no free pork chops in the world, as a friend of mine used to say. Okay? Next, we look at a prison guard. This is a decision-making question. Okay, his high school buddy is smoking in the jail cell he's patrolling. The officer, the guard, is patrolling. There's no tobacco allowed in the facility, so therefore the friend of his is in violation if he writes him up. If the guard writes him up or reports him, he won't be released on parole. So what is he going to do? Well, what standard should be in place? The same standard should be in place, that there's policies and procedures, codes of ethics, value statements, but they may change a little bit, because to write a policy or procedure that says you will not accept a free meal is not the same as having policies and procedures and training about decision making, because you could never have a rule. You wouldn't write a policy that says if you find an inmate violating jail rules, you write them up. That would be ludicrous. Okay, so what you're looking for here is the decision making process, and that is, are you going to put your personal career, your badge, if you will, ahead of the welfare, or put the inmate's welfare ahead of your badge? You're going to do them a favor that's going to cost you, your wife, kids, husband, dog, cat, everybody grief the rest of your career. Okay, no, you're not going to do that. Really, really sorry you're smoking in this situation. What you're going to do is you're going to get written up. All right. The last one I mentioned was the training about inmate games. For those of you that have never worked in a facility, inmates run games all day long. We used to always talk about the other deputy. That's because you would be on duty in a housing unit. Mr. Davis, can I make a phone call? Mr. Davis, can I go see the doctor? Mr. Davis, I want to go to the library. I mean, like little children almost. And the answer was always, well, wait and see the other deputy. And they knew that meant the other deputy was going to say, wait, see the other deputy. You listened to what they wanted and needed. You made sure it wasn't something that they needed, and then you reacted appropriately. Okay, let's move on to the principles of constitutional law. This is about searches, and so it's the difference between police searches and probation searches. I think all of you should do okay with this one because we've been over it. What are the ethical and legal issues of a search of a probationer's home? A probationer has waived their right to protections of the Fourth Amendment. They've given up search and seizure, and therefore the probation officer can come and search the home. A police officer couldn't just knock on the door and say, I'd like to search your home, because as we move down to the last bullet point, you have to have a search warrant, you have to have probable cause, it has to be incident to a lawful arrest. Could be a search in plain view. It could be the doctrine search, or excuse me, the Carroll doctrine, and that's a search of a vehicle where it's in plain view and maybe the evidence will disappear. Could be a pat down that's conducted for safety. But I think in the middle of the bullets it says there 129 to 134. Take a few minutes and read that. Yes, you want to do well on the test and you got 1,000 things going on. Those are our civil rights. Those are our search and seizure rights. Don't look at it like you're going to be a police officer or a probation officer or a prison guard. Look at it that you're walking down the boulevard and somebody stops you. Okay? Let's take a look at one of the three cases. This first one is Ashcroft v. I believe it's Iqbal. So much easier for me. Iqbal. I apologize, I do not know how to pronounce his Pakistani name. So anyway, it was post 9/11 and he was detained and charged by federal authorities, but high interest, he's Pakistani and Muslim. What he argued is in court was that his race, religion, national origin had contravened the First and Fifth Amendments. He had done nothing wrong, basically, is what they're saying. The United States Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that he failed to show sufficient facts to state a claim of purposeful, unlawful discrimination. Okay, so in this case, the Supreme Court ruled that he was unable to show that he was singled out just because of his race, religion, national origin. Okay? Also in that case, if you elect to read this one, you only have to read one of the three. FBI Director Mueller, does that name sound familiar? He's now the special attorney. He's not the special prosecutor looking into the Russia vote tampering thing. Attorney General Ashcroft acted reasonably and they didn't order subordinates to act illegally, to, in other words, arrest people merely because they were Muslim or that they were from Pakistan, something like that. Interesting case, not overly complicated one. In this one, Herring versus the United States, this is I'm offering you this as a quick look so then you can read the cases and see. Officers in Coffee County arrested Herring on a Dale County warrant. The warrant had been recalled though, but not removed from the database. So a search incident to a lawful arrest of Mr. Herring found a gun and drugs. So he was charged. The defense argued that evidence should be suppressed, that was an unlawful search because it was an unlawful arrest. The court ruled, and I quoted it there because it's important, I think, for us in general knowledge. When police mistakes leading to an unlawful search are the result of isolated negligence attenuated from the search rather than systemic error or reckless disregard of constitutional requirements, the exclusionary rule does not apply. So in this case, the isolated negligence was the failure to remove that warrant from the automated systems by Dale County. Now, whether it was the courts or the keeper of the warrants, who knows? But what the courts ruled is that's just an isolated error. Okay, it's not systemic and it's not reckless. So if you want to look at this case, that would be what you would look at. How's this for the next one? I had to put that in there so that you can take a moment if you decide you want to look at Melendez v. Massachusetts. His has another kind of an interesting case too, and that is that he comes out of a Kmart with two other people and gets arrested for possession of drugs. And they all go to the police station, and of course in the ride to the police station in the police car, they're fumbling around. The officer notices that. The officers search the back seat. For those of you who don't know, police officers, when they start their shift before they quote-unquote go 10-8, they pull the back seat out of that police car and look and see if there's anything in it, so they can then testify, in this case for Mr. Melendez-Diaz, that there was nothing in there when he got in there, but when he left there were, I think it says 19 bags and 19 bags containing powdery substance and $320 on the floor. So they send the dope off to the lab. Lab comes back and says, yeah, it's all cocaine. All of those are the facts. What Melendez-Diaz argued is that the lab reports were testimonial in nature, that the confrontation clause of the Sixth Amendment, we have a right to confront our accusers, that his defense attorney be allowed to cross-examine the analyst who prepared the tests. Okay, and Massachusetts argued that the analysis report were not testimonial within the meaning of the Sixth Amendment. The Supreme Court found that lab reports are testimonial. If they found that, then every case that had any kind of a lab test, there would be a forensic scientist in court testifying about it. Okay, this has potential to create great difficulties. Okay, so the question is whether the state's lab report prepared for use in criminal prosecution is testimonial evidence or not, and then whether the Massachusetts state law violates the Confrontation Clause, 6th Amendment of the Constitution that allows laboratory tests. Now, I went very, very quickly because if you find this one interesting, you ought to take a minute and read it. It doesn't take long, 10 minutes, and you can read the whole case. But it's a very realistic question for search and seizure. Massachusetts Court of Appeals affirmed. The trial court's decision rejected the claim and said that was okay. All right. Don't forget the rubric. Okay. Now there are 6 items in the rubric. As you can see, they follow the pattern of those cases. There are standards, decision-making, principles, the court cases, and please don't forget your career path. All right, and you'll be graded on the articulation of your response. And my note there should be on the career path 1. But which of these professions, which of these cases is most in line with your personal ethical beliefs? And that's what you're going to write about. Hope that helps you. I went quickly, just trying to make sure you get the high pass of it. Okay. Let me know what I can do to help. Emails, text, Skype, join me, or anything else you can think of. Keep those cards and letters coming.